The empire that fell standing, the Persian legacy in modern Iran. Imagine an empire so vast, it stretched from the scorching sands of Egypt to the towering mountains of India. A power so feared, even the battle-hardened Greeks renowned for their valor regarded it as nearly invincible. This was the Persian Empire, one of the greatest civilizations of the ancient world. But how could such a mighty empire, ruled by men who called themselves kings of kings, fall so completely that its very capital will be reduced to ashes and forgotten for centuries? Today, we plunge into the epic and tragic downfall of the Persian Empire, a saga of betrayal, brutal warfare, unchecked luxury, and the rise of one of the most legendary conquerors in human history, Alexander the Great. Prepare to witness not just the collapse of a kingdom, but the end of an entire era. The rise before the fall. To understand the fall, we must first journey back to the empire's golden age. The Persian Empire wasn't born quietly. It erupted into history like a desert storm. And that storm had a name, Cyrus the Great. In 550 BC, Cyrus defeated the Median Empire and launched a series of campaigns that would forge the largest empire the world had ever seen. He conquered Lydia and Anatolia, took the ancient city of Babylon, and extended his dominion deep into Central Asia and to the very edges of India. But Cyrus was more than a warrior. He was a visionary administrator. He respected local cultures, allowed religious freedom, and governed through a decentralized system using satraps, regional governors who maintained order across vast provinces. His successor, Darius I, expanded the empire even further. He built roads like the legendary Royal Road from Sardis to Susa's standardized currency and introduced a taxation system that made the empire financially robust. It became the model of ancient administration. But with greatness came a dangerous illusion, the illusion of invincibility. As wealth poured in, luxury began to rot the heart of the empire. The palaces of Susa and Persepolis gleamed with gold, marble, and towering sculptures. They were monuments to power, but beneath the surface, cracks began to form. But like any machine, it needed every cog to work. The nobility drifted from the people, and the kings ruled more through spectacle than substance. Under Cyrus and Darius, Persia was a near-perfect machine. And when those cogs began to break from within and from the growing threat beyond its borders, the mighty colossus began to tremble. A rot from within, to all who entered its cities, the Persian Empire seemed unshakable. Persepolis dazzled with marble halls and colossal columns. Susa bloomed with lush hanging gardens and incense-scented palaces. But behind this glittering mask, the empire was rotting. Over generations, the Persian kings abandoned the disciplined simplicity of Cyrus and Darius. Later monarchs became near-divine figures surrounded by harems, servants, eunuchs, and sycophantic advisors. The court transformed into a nest of vanity, lust, and corruption. Satraps ruled their provinces like petty kings, siphoning resources and building power for themselves. Meanwhile, the people suffered under crushing taxes, funding the lavish lifestyles of their distant rulers. Rebellions flared in Egypt, Lydia, and among the Greeks of Ionia. Suppressing them was brutal and costly in both lives and treasure. Worse, corruption seeped deep into the imperial system. The once effective decentralization now became a weakness, as satraps acted in self-interest. Armies were poorly trained, underpaid, and demoralized. Inside the palaces, paranoia reigned. Kings like Xerxes I and Artaxerxes II spent more time hunting conspiracies than defending borders. Assassination became a standard tool of succession. Sons murdered fathers, brothers betrayed brothers. Sleeping enemy awakens, the Persian throne turned into a blood-soaked arena. And while the empire tore itself apart, the Greeks watched. For decades, the Greeks had been subjugated, humiliated, and divided. In wine-soaked banquets and in the silence of corrupted halls. But now they began to unite under one idea: freedom. When Greek cities in Asia Minor rose against Persian rule, and beyond the Macedonian mountains, a young king was watching with hungry eyes. The fall of the Persian Empire did not begin on a battlefield. It began in whispers, Darius launched a massive invasion of Greece. At first, the Greeks seemed no more than a distant nuisance, small city-states constantly feuding, lacking a supreme ruler. Darius, I never forgot the insult. The Athenians triumphed, proving the greatest empire in the world could bleed. But Persia made a fatal mistake. It underestimated the power of freedom and the Greek warrior spirit. Darius' son, it was there that the names Thermopylae Leonidas, the Persian navy, was outmaneuvered and humiliated, and Sparta were carved into legend. Returned in 480 BC with one of the largest armies ever assembled, over 200,000 men, a human tidal wave. Alexander, sensing blood, pushed forward and a new power emerged, Macedonia. It began with the Ionian Revolt in 499 BC. The Persians expected a quick victory but underestimated the support from Athens and Eretria. Though the revolt was crushed, the Spartans' defiance inspired unity across Greece. He vowed revenge, and thus began the greco-persian wars, a conflict that would define an age. In 490 BC, but Persian arrogance met its match on the plains of Marathon. Against all odds, Xerxes I, and yet, though ultimately defeated, at Salamis, each loss drained Persian resources and shattered its myth of invincibility. Hardened in battle, obsessed with heroes like Achilles, he didn't just want to rule. Son of Philip II of Macedonia, rebellions grew bolder. A bold figure rose with a vision no one had dared before. The people grew disillusioned. The kings grew desperate. The Greeks enter amidst Persian decay and Greek confidence to unite the known world under one crown. His name was Alexander. Tutored by Aristotle, he wanted immortality. At just 20 years old, after his father's assassination, Alexander seized the throne. He quickly secured Greece and turned his eyes eastward. Persia would be his ultimate prize and destiny. In 334 BC, he crossed the Hellespont with only 35,000 men, a small force compared to Persia, but brilliantly trained, highly disciplined, and led by a genius. At Granicus, Alexander crushed the Persian army. At Issus in 333 BC, he faced Darius III himself, who fled, abandoning his family and treasure, a devastating blow to Persian morale. But the death blow came at Gaugamela. In 331 BC, Darius unleashed all that remained war elephants, armored chariots, a massive army. Still, Alexander outmaneuvered him, shattering the Persian center and sending Darius fleeing once more. It was the end. Persia would never recover. The end of an empire. Alexander marched through Babylon, took Susa, and reached Persepolis, the empire's symbolic heart. In a night of drunken fury, he ordered the burning of Xerxes' great palace, a fiery revenge for Athens' destruction. The flames that engulfed Persepolis didn't just consume stone and gold. They burned centuries of tradition, pride, and identity. Darius III, betrayed by his own men, was murdered while fleeing. When Alexander found the body, he covered it with his own cloak and ordered a royal burial, not from mercy, but from recognition that he had ended not just a reign, but an entire civilization. The Persian Empire, once ruler of 3 continents, lay in ruins beneath the feet of a foreign king. Though Alexander adopted Persian customs, married Persian women, and sought to merge East and West, the soul of the empire had been broken. Its people, bereft of kings, stood between resistance and assimilation. Temples, texts, and tradition survived, but the royal patronage was gone. The eternal empire had become a fading memory. And yet, the Persian legacy endured in architecture, governance, coins, and religious tolerance. Rome, Byzantium, and countless others would learn from Persia's rise and its fall. A final lesson: the fall of the Persian Empire wasn't just the end of a kingdom. It was the death of a worldview, a collapse of religion, politics, and power. It was a brutal reminder. No empire, no matter how mighty, is immune to decay. The story of the world is cyclical. What rises in glory may fall with thunder. Now that you witnessed the epic journey of Persia's rise and fall, we ask, do you believe the empire could have survived if it had responded differently to the Greek threat? Leave your thoughts in the comments. The Persian collapse teaches us this: brute force and unchecked wealth are not enough to sustain an empire. Even the mightiest kingdoms can rot from within long before they fall from without. Cyrus and Darius built a magnificent machine, but their heirs lost themselves in vanity, intrigue, and decay. Meanwhile, a young king, forged by Greek ideals and relentless ambition, crossed deserts and mountains to bring down a world power. The Persian legacy lives on in governance, justice, and multiculturalism. But so too does its ruin a warning to all civilizations. No empire is eternal. And when pride speaks louder than reason, collapse is only a matter of time.